Usually when there's a big tech breakthrough, it's not just one thing that's happening, it's a bunch of stuff that are all going on in the technology world that allow for a new experience to take root. And in this case, a lot of it is related to computing power and how much of that computing power is now on our devices. Because up until about 2 or 3 years ago, most of the voice processing that you got on the device had to be done in the cloud. And that, no matter what people tell you, has a certain amount of latency on it and a certain, even though certain companies might tell you there's no downside of being in the cloud and there's no lag when you're on your mobile device, the reality is we all know that there is, especially if you're not in a highly connected environment or if you're in a city or blah, blah, blah. But so a lot of this computing power is now on the device itself. The second thing that's happening is the advance of generative AI. And Gen AI, when we started writing this book, we were talking a lot about natural language understanding and how Gen AI was going to change that, but it was all purely theoretical. The book, we published this October 10th of this year. The manuscript was basically done last November, and we had shipped it, and it was in editing, and all this takes weeks and months. And all of a sudden, ChatGPT 3.5 gets released, and the world gets turned on its head. And we're sitting there going, well, holy crap, did we get this whole voice thing wrong? It's really all about ChatGPT and Gen AI. And 4.0 came out. And then as we were further investigating this and kind of thinking about it, we're like, this is what Gen AI is really what's going to unlock the voice experience. And those two things working together are the magic that's happening right now. And so this is a kind of illustration of how the compute power that's been used to create these LLMs has advanced over time. Now, this is on a logarithmic scale. So you look at this and you're like, it's kind of interesting. Stuff's moving lower left, upper right. Every graph I see moves lower left, upper right. But if you plot it on a linear scale, it looks completely different. And this is what's happening right now, right? Every 6 to 9 months, these models get about 100 times better, or at least they're using 100 times more compute power. So you start thinking about that and saying, well, is ChatGPT going to be 100 times better next year? Now, it's not going to be 100 times better because there's marginal improvements. But what's happening right now is we've hit this point in the curve where things are happening very, very quickly. And I can show you those charts, but the reality is, how's it manifesting itself in our lives, right? This is, on the top is the evolution of Pixar, Toy Story, over 25 years almost. Not that different. Toy Story 1995 was marginally worse in terms of the kind of user experience than 2019. Now you look at something like Midjourney, and this is what it looked like on the far side in February 22, and a year later, it's completely lifelike, the images that are getting created. That is how fast the space is evolving, and it's all primarily due to compute power. Now, so that's one thing that's going on. The second thing that's going on is we have these hype cycles, and we are already probably, I think CNBC ran a story 2 weeks ago that was basically the coming AI winter. There have been AI winners for the last 30 years. AI goes up, AI goes down. But we're going to be in another hype cycle that we are probably already in the cusp of people saying, all right, I used ChatGPT. It's super cool. It wrote me a song for my mom's 50th wedding anniversary. My kid used it to do his homework. Like, okay, what else is it going to do? What's going to happen, and there's going to be a lot of disillusion, is people are going to say, well, it can't really do everything it was promised. It's just going to take a bit. It's going to take a bit to, and this is where the voice piece comes in, where the user experience gets figured out, and more importantly, it gets hardwired into systems of record, right? So, one of the things we like to say is ChatGPT is super smart, but it can't even change my address for my American Express card, right? Because it's not wired into the system yet. But we know that's going to happen. Intuitively, that's going to happen. And so as we get into next year, we're going to start coming out of this thing, and then you're going to see massive practical applications for these kinds of services. The other thing that's going on from a tech perspective is the transcription piece, right? Is if you think about a voice experience, and it's kind of the second half of our book talks about this, the first thing that has to happen is a computer has to be able to transcribe what you say. What are the words that you said? Second thing is then it has to understand those words. Generative AI solves the second, does not solve the first. But incredible investment in that first phase as well. Google now says, I don't necessarily believe it, but they say that they're at 98% transcription accuracy. I think most of our experiences when we're using tools like Alexa and Siri is it's not 98%, it might be 90%, 95%, certainly goes down with accents, certainly goes down based on kind of ambient noise. But we know it's getting better every day and will continue to get better every day. And actually a lot of the Gen AI technology is being used and applied to this problem because Gen AI helps the system predict what is the likely word that this person said, even if we don't understand it. So these systems are all kind of getting better. And then what this is going to translate to is a winning user experience. I'm going to come back to this at the end, but the lens to look at this with is what are the first applications that this voice interface to computers is going to solve for us. And so one is specific search. When we want something very specific and we have a long tail way to say it, meaning many words, we don't want to type those because it's so slow, but it's going to get us to the information we want much more quickly. Anything related to composition and logging, how much time a day do all of us spend typing on our devices? Most of that's going to go away. Coaching and instruction, because we can simulate teaching and we can simulate coaching in real-time experiences. For example, they've already launched these kinds of systems where they're teaching doctors in Africa, and the system is observing them and giving them coaching based on the feedback that it's seeing, all voice-based, and in that case, image-based as well. And then large set data analysis. I'm going to talk about all these, but it's just a way of looking at it.